keeping separation. We're getting rid of the plague. It's a plague on our country like nobody's ever seen. But we're winning the battle. We're winning the war. Celebrate. Bring the family together like no other. We have a lot to be thankful for. Happy Easter, everybody.
We're going to connect the dots for anybody who has ears to hear. Some people are going to want to dispute this, but we're not going to argue with anyone. This is what's going on. There is no Q, there is no anonymous that has any information about this government or anything else that's going on. They have been leading you down a path of lies, all to hide the truth. And here's what's really going on. FEMA has more power than the President of the United States or the Congress. It has the power to suspend laws, move entire populations, arrest and detain citizens without a warrant, and hold them without trial. It can seize property, food supplies, transportation systems, and can suspend the Constitution. When a state of emergency is declared, Executive Order 11921 allows the Federal Emergency Preparedness Agency to develop plans to establish control over the mechanisms of production and distribution of energy sources, wages, salaries, credit, and the flow of money in the U.S. financial institution in any undefined national emergency. It also provides that when a state of emergency is declared by the President, Congress cannot review this action for 6 months. Now, with the understanding that after Trump signed the National Emergency Declaration, FEMA took over. Now, this is March 13th, 2020. Listen to what he's going to say now. This is right after he signed the National Emergency into effect.
It is only the beginning of what we're really doing, and now we're in a different phase.
This is only the beginning of what we're really doing, because what they're really doing is putting everything in place to start the New World Order.
Now we're in a different phase.
The different phase that he's speaking of is that he is no longer president, and he has given full power over to FEMA when he signed the National Emergency Declaration.
We had some very old and obsolete rules.
Those old and obsolete rules are also known as the Constitution of the United States.
That we had to live with. It worked under certain circumstances, but not under mass circumstances. Under mass circumstances is being under FEMA rule. They were there for a long time. They were in place for a long time, and we're breaking them down now.
They're definitely breaking them down because the Constitution is suspended.
And they're very usable for certain instances, but not for this.
Because they can't go forward with their plan with the Constitution, our constitutional rights still intact.
To unleash the full power of the federal government in this effort today, I am officially declaring a national emergency.
So he is officially telling us in a coded message that we are now under the rule of FEMA, no longer having a president. Fast forward to March 19th, 2020, in the FEMA National Response Coordination Center.
Well, Mr. President, Vice President, thank you for being here. Really appreciate your visit to FEMA. I think your visit really, as you indicated last week, by signing the national emergency, has really empowered FEMA.
And he just made the declaration that FEMA is empowered, has really empowered FEMA.
This is the world you are graduating into. This is what I want to talk about today with you for a few minutes. To lead in shaping a new world order for the 21st century.
The affirmative task we have now is to actually create a new world order.
We've got to be very strong, very, very smart, and we've got to come together, not only as a nation, but as a world community.
Some of these people, this is a new normal. They're never going to go back home. So they want to help them as much so that they're never just walking out of here and feeling like they're going back onto the street. They work with them throughout the process here to help them adjust to this new world order that they're going to be living in after this.
Oh, and I imagine there's so many questions, so much concern, and all of those people. It was almost like on cue when you're talking about the army of volunteers. A flock of nuns walked right behind you.
somebody didn't want the gray state investigated, explored, and unveiled. That's why David Crowley is dead. He was the writer and director of one of the most controversial movies in modern history, and somebody didn't want him to produce it. What was so threatening about David Crowley and the gray state concept? Like Gray State, many Hollywood films have depicted apocalyptic themes and end-of-the-world scenarios, yet the directors of these films are still alive. Roland Emmerich wasn't murdered after directing blockbusters 2012 and A Day After Tomorrow. Steven Soderbergh wasn't killed after his movie, Contagion. But David Crowley is dead, along with his wife and child. They were killed before the production could be completed. What was so dangerous about Gray State? David Crowley claimed that his movie was based on real events, not Hollywood propaganda like you see in movies such as 2012.
California is going down!
God, you sound like a crazy person. The governor just said we're fine now.
The guy's an actor! He's reading a script!
So the Gray State is essentially an artistic representation of real aspects put into a fictional format. Once you open your eyes and start looking at all these trends like RFID, like martial law, like FEMA, like executive orders, you have to act within your own capacity to sort of, talk about this. A lot of people filter that into the political realm. A lot of people do other things like grassroots style. I mean, I'm a filmmaker, Danny's an actor. So we put our heads together and we started making a project that would act within our own faculty to portray that in a creative manner. So there's a story here. I have to start telling a story. So I was looking for the next film project to work on anyway. I'm like, well, this would be perfect. And it's not really perfect because you have to kind of filter down all this stuff into a narrative storyline that's not just propaganda telling you what's going to happen next, like 2012 or A Day After Tomorrow. It's got to be a human story, and it's got to be endearing and compelling. The way we're different is we're independent, and we don't expect any participation from any studios just because of its contentious nature. I mean, anyone knows that Hollywood has not approached this topic so directly before. That's what makes Gray State so compelling. It's that different. Definitely the trailer is our best efforts to kind of show this world and expose these very real issues that exist in our world today.
David claims that Hollywood has never dealt with topics like RFID, internment camps in America, and detention. Instead, they have produced propaganda in place of real issues. When Hollywood does discuss internment and detention, it's almost always about World War II and the Holocaust. Literally thousands of films have been produced about the Holocaust, and yet one single film that addresses the potential for a Holocaust in the United States is stopped mid-production after its director is murdered. Seems a bit odd, doesn't it? They don't want Americans, Canadians, and other Western countries to know what is coming. And that is a plan to intentionally collapse Western society. If you don't believe me, read the plan that's been in the books for over a century. Planned out by the Illuminati and penned by Albert Pike back in the 1800s in his 3 World War predictions. Gray State was simply too threatening. It revealed too much, not just the obvious points of what could happen with the collapse of a society, things like martial law, food shortages, and a provisional government. It goes beyond this. David knew a secret, and he left it inside of the trailer for Gray State, in plain sight. David Crowley used the Illuminati's favorite game against the notorious cabal. It's a game they've played with the human race for years. They provide clues about the future to toy with us. They did it with 9/11. They've done it with other major catastrophes. It's called predictive programming. On occasion, though, they get outsmarted at their own game. What was David's hidden message inside the Gray State? And could it be the reason for his death? Perhaps the scariest part of Gray State's conceptual trailer is this character here, who appears to be operating a guillotine. David Crowley was very intentional in this frame of the movie. He added something that I believe he wanted the people to know about. Who is the identity of this executioner? If you look closely, you will see that this terrifying character is wearing something around his waist. It appears to look like an apron. The executioner wears a Freemason apron, complete with the all-seeing eye, the compass, and the 2 pillars. I do believe David Crowley is trying to tell us something.
为什么强大的国家都会走向灭亡呢？古希腊、罗马帝国、不列颠帝国、美国，因为他们都犯同样的错误，与原来使得他们成功的原则背道而驰。美国政府企图以庞大的开支和税收来摆脱严重的经济衰退，巨额的所谓刺激开支。庞大的医疗改革，政府接管私有企业，债务累累。当然，我们是他们的大债主。现在他们都得给我们干活。
You can change the future. You have to. Join Citizens Against Government Waste to stop the spending that is bankrupting America.
Fast forward to April 10th, 2020, in plain words, it's been my great honor to have been their president. Past tense.
The American people have been so disciplined. It's been my honor to be their president. I've said it before. I'll say it again. I'll say it always. It's been my great honor to have been their president, and it's been my great honor to have been their president and have been their president, have been their president. I have a big decision coming up, and I only hope to God that it's the right decision. But it'll be based on the input from a lot of very talented people, very smart people, and people that love our country. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you.
He actually will not be making any more decisions. This group of people that he says will be helping him make decisions are the ones that are making decisions now, because it is FEMA that is making the decisions. And as you can hear in this live briefing, Trump obviously does not know what's going on, because he said, you should have let us know, when Mike Pompeo said, we're in a live exercise.
Pompeo says this is a live exercise. And what you'll hear in the background is Donald Trump say, you should have let us know.
This is not about retribution. This matters going forward. We're in a live exercise here to get this right. We need to make sure that we're in a live exercise here to get this right. We're in a live exercise here to get this right. We're in a live exercise here to get this right.
Does he sound like a man that's in control of anything anymore? He just looks like he has just lost his best friend in all of these videos that we're seeing now ever since he signed the National Emergency Declaration. I'm sure most of us thought that FEMA was created to help people in disasters. But here's the truth about FEMA. FEMA was created in a series of executive orders. A presidential executive order, whether constitutional or not, becomes law simply by its publication in the Federal Registry. Congress is bypassed. Executive Order 12148 created the Federal Emergency Management Agency, that is to interface with the Department of Defense for civil defense planning and funding. An emergency czar was appointed. Executive Order 12656 appointed the National Security Council as the principal body that should consider emergency powers. This allows the government to increase domestic intelligence and surveillance of U.S. citizens, and would restrict the freedom of movement within the United States and grant the government the right to isolate large groups of civilians. That's where we're at right now, people. We are all being told what to do, where we can and can't go. The National Guard could be federalized to seal all borders and take control of U.S. airspace and all ports of entry. Executive Order 10990 allows the government to take over all modes of transportation and control of highways and seaports. Executive Order 10995 allows the government to seize and control the communications media. Executive Order 10997 allows the government to take over all electrical power, gas, petroleum, fuels, and minerals. Executive Order 10998 allows the government to take over all food resources and farms. Executive Order 11000 allows the government to mobilize civilians into work brigades under government supervision. Executive Order 11001 allows the government to take over all health, education, and welfare functions. Executive Order 11002 designates the Postmaster General to operate a national registration of all persons. That's where your census comes in. Executive Order 11003 allows the government to take over all airports and aircraft, including commercial aircraft. Executive Order 11004 allows the Housing and Finance Authority to relocate communities, build new housing with public funds, designate areas to be abandoned, and establish new locations for populations. Executive Order 11005 allows the government to take over railroads, inland waterways, and public storage facilities. Executive Order 11051 specifies the responsibility of the Office of Emergency Planning and gives authorization to put all executive orders into effect in times of increased international tensions and economic or financial crisis. Executive Order 11310 grants authority to the Department of Justice to enforce the plans set out in executive orders to institute industrial support, to establish judicial and legislative liaison, to control all aliens, to operate penal and correctional institutions. And Executive Order 11049 assigns emergency preparedness function to federal departments and agencies, consolidating 21 operative executive orders issued over a 15-year period.
I had been to Puyallup a few times when it was the fairgrounds of Western Washington. Little did I know that I would replace the pigs and the cows and that type of stuff, because they restructured the fairgrounds and the parking lots into these temporary hovels. And they had a hell of a lot of nerve calling it Camp Harmony. But anyway, it was, it was a real traumatic type of living, where you're in the former stalls where the pigs and the cows and everything else were. Families of 6 and 7 were crowded into one little spot. And